Charine Nirvisesa Sundavadi Pastyatya Desatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Any questions? Okay. This evening's discussion is part 2 of a series called Gita Values. Gita Values. You all know what is Bhagavad Gita. So what's Gita Values? Some time ago, maybe like 7-8 years ago, something like that, a devotee who was scheduled to become the chairman of ISKCON's GBC, his name is Shesha Prabhu, lives in Alachua, Florida. By profession, he's an attorney. In case you need his help, he's an immigration attorney. Some people need that kind of help. Shesha Prabhu, nice devotee, and his wife. And you might be surprised, you might not be surprised to hear that there's no job description for being chairman of the GBC. So Prabhupada established and left behind its successor, so to speak, is collectively the GBC body. Very clear. Directives of management and so many things like that. Prabhupada very clearly stated how he wanted ISKCON to continue. And this particular year, some years ago, Shesha Prabhu was to become the chairman. So he started being very thoughtful like he is. He's a Brahminical type of person. What should I do? How am I supposed to do this service? So he started consulting people, and what ended up was he plus some of the devotees who are at the Oxford University and professors in the university there, and a few others, about 8 or so people, 8 or 9 people got together and started discussing how is what's the responsibility of a leader. It's the responsibility of being a good member of the society. And then Bhagavad Gita teaches us how to do those things. And so together they met and they came up with this idea that it would be nice to give some very simple bullet points, so they ended up with 6 values that guide a human being, an elevated human being, a civilized human being. And they then created, after some refining of language, a little paragraph for each of these 6 values. So you should have received a copy of those 6 values. This isn't my language, it's theirs, but it's nice. And that's what became known as the Gita Values Project. Now, to understand the relationship with values and spiritual culture, another devotee I know, his name is Konteya, and he received a PhD in organizational management. He's not a corporate person, he's a devotee, doesn't have a corporate job, but he was interested in organizational structures, to help guide ISKCON. So he made a presentation one time, and I liked it very much, and so this image comes from him. He was explaining in any organization, ISKCON or any organization, there's a system whereby one should take a look at the organization. He gave the example. Supposing one corporation buys out another corporation, or supposing Prabhupada wanted to establish the Hare Krishna movement in America, because he did. And those two things happen sometimes. So when a corporation buys out another corporation, one of the first things they do is they look at the culture of that organization. And they want to see, what their objectives are, but also what the values are, what the behaviors are of that organization. So this is a diagram that I got from Konteya. He called it the iceberg of culture. And it's because an iceberg has something that's visible, that's the little tip of the iceberg that's above the surface of the water. And in the iceberg of culture, there are measurable, observable, perceivable factors that make up a culture of an organization or group of people. And that's the visible part. And then there's the big part of the iceberg that's below the surface of the water, that's not perceivable to the senses. And they call that stated values. So like, for example, an organization will establish a mission statement. You've probably been part of organizations that do that. Mission statement. This is who we are. And these are our beliefs. And this is what we say is important. So like, for example, Prabhupada did that in the state of New York when he established ISKCON, Inc. One of the laws of the state of New York is state your purposes. So there's 7 purposes for ISKCON, and that's this one, the stated values. This is what we say is important. And then values drive behaviors. At the same time, behaviors impact or can modify values over time. So there's an interplay between the two. There's some flexibility or some modification over time. But there's another part of the iceberg of culture, that doesn't change. Unchallenged certainties, deeply held beliefs, like, for example, we're spirit soul. Your values can change, your behaviors can change, but you're still a spirit soul. Regardless of even species, you're spirit soul. So there's some unchallenged certainties involved in the culture of a person or a group of persons, or the GBC leading ISKCON or anything that you can think of. So this topic is focused on the values. And because there's mostly non-resident Indian people here in the room, you may be interested to hear. Some years ago in Delhi, the educators of India, decided they wanted to have a conference, an education conference. And the keynote speaker, I wasn't there, but I was told, the keynote speaker said, education in India today can be summarized in 5 words. Information, 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 no transformation. We're not doing our job well as educators, because real education is character development. Because one who has character may or may not have information, but whatever they have, they'll use it properly. And persons that don't have character, what happens? Give them information, information, information. You got problems, because they don't have character. So our first job as educators is building character. So what they did, at the end of this conference, from all different levels of education, not just one, they established a grant to multiple entities. To whoever wanted, they could submit their proposal. They called it value education. because they didn't want to get into religious things. So they just gave it a nice euphemistic title, Value Education. And a number of devotees submitted curriculum for value education for different levels of school, and they were selected, and now they're being taught in schools. It's covered Bhagavad Gita. But it's, the values are universal. Of course, ultimately values are resting on spiritual identity. And spiritual identity is resting upon who we are part and parcel of, the source of everything. But value education. So the Gita Values Project is focusing on this middle part of the iceberg. And another thing about Bhagavad Gita is there is information in Bhagavad Gita, but it's more than information. It's the transformation is to make an ordinary person a wise person, or to help wise persons become more wise, wiser, and wisest, and perfect. So there's a distinction here within Bhagavad Gita and within Gita values. There's a distinction between information, and I hope you can appreciate this part. It's what real knowledge is. Knowledge has information, but knowledge has more than just information. A person, just like chapter 13 of Bhagavad Gita. Some of you are familiar with Bhagavad Gita. And in chapter 13 of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asked Krishna 6 things. Matter and spirit, matter and spirit, matter and spirit. One of those pairs, matter and spirit, is knowledge and the object of knowledge. Jnanam and Gyayam, knowledge and the object of knowledge. Prakriti and Purusha, so matter and spirit. So knowledge, if you look carefully, some of you have looked carefully, at chapter 13, the items of knowledge, what are they? It's character. Amanitvam, adambitvam, shantir, arjam, evacha. So it's describing the character or the qualities, the lakshana of a person who has knowledge. That's a symptom of a person who has knowledge, is they have character. So that's Bhagavad Gita. It's presenting more than information. And the last little part here is when we're reading Bhagavad Gita or reading any spiritual text, there's an understanding that it's elevated. Like Gita Values number 1, which was done already in a previous location up here in upstate New York. Nice facility for teaching Bhagavad Gita. And it's equal vision, Pandita Samadarshana. Many of you know the verse. Vidya Vinaya Sampane, Brahmani Gavi Hastani, Shuni Chaiva Swapaki Cha Pandita Samadarshana. It's an easy one. But it's high. The Pandita doesn't just have knowledge, but they can actually see within the differences of forms of life and the behaviors of the different forms of life. There's a sameness within. And because they have that vision, they can treat others equally, although they see differences. Behaviors are corresponding to the body type. Go and embrace a tiger, for example. I see all living entities equal. So our behaviors are going to be according to our the situation and ourselves. So while seeing differences, it's an elevated position. There's the graphic is showing where we want to go, and the other side is showing where we are. And often there's a big gap between where we want to go and where we are. And when you start to get real about things, that's the humility. That's this evening's topic. Gita values number 2 is humility. Because you're not going to have equal vision if you don't have humility. If you have humility, you don't necessarily have equal vision, but it's a Gita value. So there's a big gap between where we want to go and where we are. An introspective, a quality of a person in the mode of goodness is they're introspective. And if we're a little honest, we're way over here and we're not over there yet. But we want to get over there. And how to get over there is a big gap. A nice term I learned from one of my sannyas godbrothers, Satchinandan Swami, he's from Germany, and his vocabulary is better than mine, English. But it's a Latin word, limen. So he uses this word liminal. Limen is in between this and that. For example, where Hiranyakashipu was killed by Lord Nrsingadev, it was in a limen. It was neither inside nor outside, as on a porch or a patio. Or when you come in the front door of this building, I looked, and there's a board between the floor and the door to keep the cold air in the winter from coming in. And that board is called a limen. Or in architecture, a hallway or a patio is a liminal space. So liminal space is where it's a transitioning from where we are to where we want to go can be pretty awkward. It's something like being a teenager. It's pretty awkward. Moving from being a dependent to becoming more independent. It's got its turmoil. Everyone knows. Teenage life is tough. So the good news is with Bhagavad Gita, there's some like superlative assistance, and that's Krishna's help. That's what yoga is. Linking with the Supreme, we can transition from where we are to where we want to go, as long as we take shelter. That's another teaching of Bhagavad Gita, shelter taking. Sarva dharmam parijyaja mam ekam sharanam. Mam ekam sharanam. Take shelter of Krishna. So it's easier to get there. And the journey is full of surprises and a bit of a mystery, but life is a mystery. But it's safe because Krishna is helping us. There's challenges, and sometimes you get turned upside down and shaken by your heels, and then we're back up again, and all kinds of things happen in life. But that's okay, because the journey is taking us to Krishna, full of surprises. So Gita value, somehow this is Gita value number 3. It's supposed to be Gita value number 2. Well, let's do Gita value number 3, because that's where I am. And it's nice. Humility, because I already spoke about humility.
Number 8.
Huh?
It's right there, number 8.
I beg your pardon?
Slide number 8.
Yeah, number 3. Amanitva. Hey, that's right in chapter 13. Items of knowledge. Some of you are familiar. Arjun wants to know from Krishna, what's knowledge? That's the first in the list. One who has knowledge has humility. Conversely, one who is proud, falsely proud and arrogant, that person doesn't have knowledge. So let's consider what is humility. It's easy to say what humility isn't. Here's a nice dictionary definition of humility. The state of being humble. Thanks a lot. The word humility has its origin in the Latin word humilus, which means low, or not thinking an inflated idea of oneself. That's humility. Like in Shikshastaka. Some of you know Shikshastaka. Shikshastaka is 8 ashtakas, 8 verses, instructions, Shiksha Astaka, given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, describing how to perfect one's life through the holy name. And the first line in Shikshastika 3 is Trinadapi Sunichena, thinking oneself trin, more insignificant than trin, which means straw. Supposing you walk out the front door and heading for your car and you see a straw on the sidewalk. You going to get excited? Probably not. Quite insignificant. More than that, more lowly than a blade of grass or a piece of straw. Now, Vedic wisdom has its counterparts in different cultures. Here's a statement by Confucius. Humility is the solid foundation of all virtues. It's going to get elevated up there. Humility is important. Another teaching, Chinese proverb, be like the bamboo. The higher you grow, the deeper you bow. Be like the bamboo. Have character before emerging from the soil. Remain unassuming even after having reached the clouds. Now, the first time I presented this to a public forum was in China. That's why all these Chinese sayings. But it's true that ancient cultures of the world are quite similar. No, the basis and support of Chinese culture is not knowing Krishna, but culture, or one who has knowledge, has humility. And these learned sages teach it. Remain unassuming even after having reached the clouds. Have character before emerging from the soil. Modesty is the foundation of all virtues. Pride is the chief of all evils. We should teach this to some of our leaders in the world, right? Including certain Chinese leaders. Yeah? You should go to Confucius school. Is it that this is what humility is not? An absence of self-esteem, feeling bad about oneself or putting oneself down or feeling worthless or inadequate. That's not what humility is. And on the other hand, humility is not just you tolerate other people. Is it just being quiet and I tolerate you? And that's my sign of humility. That's not what humility is. Is it blind following? No. It's being actually thoughtful about who you really are. So now here's from the Gita project writers, humility in the Gita is a virtue which is seen in behavior. So values drive behaviors. It's a value that drives the behavior of humility, but it rests on understanding and character. So it's the middle of the iceberg that drives the behaviors. And if it's not there, something else is going to come out, even if it's the false kind of humility or its opposite, pride and arrogance and belligerence. Humility rests on understanding of oneself. Small thing, because the Pandita Samadarshana, or the equal vision, is to see who we really are and who another really is, and relate or understand another in terms of their spiritual identity, as well as recognizing differences on the coverings, the gross covering and the subtle coverings, different personalities, types, no problem. It's nice. It's nature, it's real. And the soul is also real. And therefore, how do you become humble? well, becoming humble requires understanding who you are. I'm going to tell a little Prabhupada story. It's short. I heard this from Satsrup Maharaj, who was with Prabhupada in a morning walk in New York City in 1967, something like that. By that time, there was a 26 Second Avenue storefront. Some of you know the history. Anybody not know the history? The place where ISKCON was formed in 1966. There was a storefront. Before there was a storefront, there was nothing. It was quite austere for our founder Acharya, without going into details. Finally, they got him a little apartment, and that was in the back area, so a little small studio apartment, and the front was a vacant storefront. Something like 10 feet by 25 feet. Narrow, like a subway car or bus, something like, that's kind of size space. But that's what he had. And every day, it started with 3 times a week. In the evening, Kirtan, Bhagavad Gita, Kirtan, Prasadam. And the Kirtans were very ecstatic. They became very, very lively, and more people came. And it started to grow and grow and grow. Prabhupada was attracting the hearts and the minds of young people. They were coming from, not sattvic backgrounds, but they were becoming cleansed by his association and the process of bhakti itself. So one morning, Prabhupada was going for a walk, and one of the devotees with him was the president of that little place, the 26 Second Avenue Center. His name was Brahmananda. Big body, very powerful person, carried lots of responsibility with lots of different things, with publication of Prabhupada's writings and so many things, handling of funds and so arranging for festivals and everything. So he asked Prabhupada, I'm getting all this fame and honor and position and recognition. How am I supposed to remain humble? Same question. Here's Prabhupada's answer. In the spiritual world, there's unlimited Vaikuntha planets, the topmost of which is Krishna Loka, shaped like a lotus. And all those spiritual planets are resting in the vastness, unlimited vastness of the Brahmajyoti, or spiritual sky. He stopped. He put his cane on the pavement and went through this whole thing. And in one corner of the vastness of the spiritual sky, there's a cloud of material energy called Mahatattva. In that cloud of the Mahatattva, one corner of the spiritual sky, Mahavishnu is reclining on the bed of Anantashesh and lying on the causal ocean. And from the body of Mahavishnu, with his exhaling, come unlimited numbers of universes. And of those unlimited numbers of universes, there's one that's very small, and that's this universe. In this one universe, there are so many different planetary systems, 14 planetary systems. One of those planetary systems is planet Earth. And in this planet Earth, there are 7 continents. In 7 continents, there's one called North America. In North America, there's one state, one country called the United States. There's one state called New York State. In New York State, there's one city called New York City. In New York City, there's so many millions of people, so many streets, and here we are standing on Mott Street, and you're asking me how to remain humble. I was told much later that Prabhupada had the same discussion with a devotee in Los Angeles, who was the president there, Karandar, and he gave him the same explanation. Because really, we're quite tiny. Really, it's not just false or cosmetic. It's really tiny in the big picture of things. And now, who are we? That's a good question. So what I did here is I took some images. This is a nice graphic image of one universe inside with the 14 planetary systems, the Earth planet, and you recognize Sumeru in the middle and the upper planets above Sumeru and so forth. And in this earthly region between us and the Svargaloka, there's our solar system. And in our solar system, there you see the planet Earth. And planet Earth, there's a map of the Earth planet, there's a map of North America, there's a map of the United States, there's a map of New York State, there's the map of Monroe County, there's a map of Rochester, and we could keep going, and which street are we on, they have pictures online of, I was going to do it before I got here, of what does your house look like? It's online. Everything's Google these days. With all of this, not only humble, but who am I? And where do I fit into the big picture of the big picture? What's my part to play? Who am I? Okay, we went through these, the earlier Gita values is I'm spirit soul. I'm a spirit soul. That's a little skinny guy there. That's the spirit soul. But if I accept my position as being quite insignificant, then it makes it easier to genuinely be humble. Humility is acceptance of ourselves as being quite tiny and quite insignificant. And with that humility, makes it much easier to accept higher teachings. The converse is also true. Supposing I'm proud, teachings aren't going to go in so easily. They're going to bounce, isn't it? The devotee that I first found out about this Gita values was from a devotee named Adipurusha Prabhu. Adipurusha has been a teacher of Bhakti Shastri. Some of you know what Bhakti Shastri is. Some of you probably taken Bhakti Shastri. There are 4 essential books that Prabhupada identified that devotees should know to become Brahmanically qualified. Bhagavad Gita, Nectar Devotion, Nectar of Instruction, 2 books by Rupa Goswami and Sri Ishopanishad. Prabhupada had translated them all with commentary. So he said we should learn those 4 books. So Adipurusha has been teaching those 4 books for like 15 years. He's a good teacher. And he teaches in Vrindavan. And he comes and travels sometimes. So he was visiting in Washington, D.C., and he was asked to give like a mini seminar on Bhagavad Gita. So this is what he did. He said, Bhagavad Gita is teaching this one principle. You learn this one principle, you can learn Bhagavad Gita. It's the acceptance principle. When we don't accept an undesired event, it becomes anger. When we accept it, it becomes tolerance. Next. When we don't accept uncertainty, it becomes fear. When we accept it, it becomes adventure. When we don't accept others' bad behavior towards us, it becomes hatred. When we accept it, it becomes forgiveness. When we don't accept others' success, it becomes jealousy. When we accept it, it becomes inspiration. If you like, I can provide you with this slide. A lot of you have your phones up to take a picture. I'll send the slide. Who do I send the slide to? Huh? Okay, you give me your some way. WhatsApp is easiest for me. Give me a phone number and I'll send it to you, and you can dance and send it to everybody else. And then acceptance is the key to handling life well. And that's Bhagavad Gita teaching. In Bhagavad Gita, acceptance is demonstrated by service in the mood of surrender. Something that's foundational, implies something that follows it, the cause and effect. It's resting upon. Acceptance is part of humility, and without humility, how are you going to do service to a superior and accepting and take shelter of a superior? It's not going to happen. But when there's acceptance, then it's easy, more easy at least. It's easy to render service to a superior and be happy, even if it's good times, bad times. There's, in this world, chapter 2 Bhagavad Gita, it's a place of duality, isn't it? Matra sparshas kaunteya sitoshna sukha dukkha da. There's two, sukha and dukkha. It's the place. Tangsta tiksha swabharata. We should tolerate, but more than tolerate, just accept. But the accept is acceptance of oneself, because the duality, just like the winter season is coming. You all know because you live here. Winter season is coming. And it's okay. And then it gets to be a little colder, and but it's going to pass, and then the spring season will come, and it's duality. Sometimes you're honored, sometimes you're dishonored. Sometimes you're honored when you don't deserve it. Sometimes you're dishonored when you don't deserve it. That hurts. But it's the nature of the place. Sometimes and sometimes. Sometimes there's pleasure, sometimes there's pain. Sometimes it's night, sometimes it's dark. Sometimes it's winter, sometimes it's summer. It's a place of duality. It's just the nature of the place. So through that, passing through the realm that's a place of duality, what's stable? And that's stable, that's the bottom of the iceberg. It's an unchanging reality. As one can connect with who we really are, that's the place of humility. It's a place of acceptance. It's a place from which genuine devotional service is, there's no expectation. Just do it the other way. If there's expectation, then I do something to get something. That's called fruitive activity. Isn't it? You do something to get something. And that's the nature of the place. We do something to get. Who doesn't do something to get something? There is such a thing, and that's the position of devotional service. You do it because, not just mode of goodness is you do because it's to be done. You follow? I don't steal because you don't steal. I speak the truth because you speak the truth. I don't lie. And so forth. I go out of my way to lend a hand to other people because that's what you do. Because it's duty. It's just a human being's life. I want to be a human being. I don't want to be an animal. But spiritual consciousness goes beyond duty. They're not on the same platform. Duty and spiritual loving service are not on the same platform. And how to get to that spiritual loving service platform? Bhagavad Gita teaches us how to get there. Humility is being in our natural state, acting from the spiritual platform, realizing that we are insignificant spirit souls who can make a difference when we embrace the mood of service. And service unto whom? And if you miss the unto whom part, then it's not bhakti. It's still service, but it's not devotional service. Humility means that one should not be anxious to have the satisfaction of being honored by others. That's Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, same section. Here's Mother Teresa. We're almost done. If you are humble, nothing will touch you, neither praise nor disgrace, because you know what you are. She's saying the same thing. So we have that lesson from Bhagavad Gita. Here's Krishna instructing Arjuna. Humility aided Arjuna to understand himself and what he must do in the greater scheme of things, because Krishna made the picture very clear, what he wanted, and because he was capable of humility, he was able to do what Krishna wanted. Humility is not weakness. Some people think it is. People will take advantage of you if you're humble. So don't be humble. It nurtured Arjuna's self-esteem, self-confidence, and courage. It is the jewel of the broad-minded and the key to a spiritual life. Now, the end coming up shortly is going to be a discussion, interactive, breakout session thing. You know what that is? Modern educators have adopted that method, and it helps people take what they've heard and bring it in, integrate it. So we're going to do a little bit at the end. So I hope you're hearing these messages. Humility gives acceptance. Acceptance gives courage. Courage gives openness. Openness gives access to higher teachings. That's another nice slide. I think I'll send you that one too. The acceptance in this one. This is good. Okay. Here comes the application exercise. So I'm going to leave this next slide on the screen. I'm going to ask you to have a little discussion in groups. Supposing, for example, there's praise for some service that you've done nicely. Supposing that happens. There's 3 options. No, no, no. That happened yesterday. Without naming names or the detail. I was in a little gathering and someone was being appreciated. And he said, no, no, no. And I said, yes, yes, yes. Said, but it's not you. You're an instrument on behalf of. No, 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 no. Yes, 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 yes. So denial is one option when praise comes your way. The other is saying, just your ego gets inflated. And then there's a third where you deflect that praise or the appreciation or the recognition to someone that enabled you to do what you're able to do. Krishna or your spiritual master or some kind person, engaging somebody like me that's unqualified to do any service at all, and then gave me some ability to do that service. So the praise goes to that person or to those persons. So the praise, it just flows right through you. It doesn't stick. So now here's the discussion. 2 different responses to feedback given to a leader regarding some service needing improvement. Human relationships, right? Because we're devotees. We're trying to be devotees at least. And sometimes you see something in someone else. It doesn't have to be a leader, but you see something in someone else that some improvement would be very nice. Some persons want it. Some persons ask for it, but when they get it, they don't want it. So how do you be in service to another person where there's some feedback, where there's needing some improvement? So here's 2 role plays or configurations. A leader lacking humility becomes agitated receiving feedback from a subordinate who is advised by a neutral person who they consulted to directly speak their heart. In this disturbed condition, the leader becomes insulting, accusing the underling of insubordination without acknowledging or addressing their own shortcomings. Now maybe that doesn't happen in your circles that you move, but it's common. Here's another. A leader who is humble, receives respectful feedback, responds to a constructive evaluation in a manner that is equally respectful, apologetic, asking for forgiveness, and commits to correcting their error. So this is inviting you as a group of people, look around the room, and those that are proximate to you makes it easier. So groups of 2, 3, 4, sometimes people like more than 4 or 5, sit together in a group and discuss these 2 scenarios. And then the practical application is, what if some feedback comes to you? What are ways that you can receive constructive improvement recommendations and receive it in a graceful, more graceful manner than you might have otherwise. This is the application of the humility principle. So at first it becomes others, and then it becomes yourself. Is the exercise clear? Any questions about the exercise? Because when I stop talking, you're going to start talking. Clear? Okay, look around, and whoever you want to sit with somebody, and begin your discussions. 2, 3, 4. Stretch 5 is stretching it. And then I'm going to invite for some feedback. That someone from your group can share with the rest of us. Sir, you going to participate in this? He's not going to participate. Okay. It's okay. Shanti.
There we go. That's muted.
Respect sometimes not comes from the person who is there, but how humble you are. And once you become humble, you treat yourself at a level where you understand everybody is a soul that's a higher being than of course people in people. So then when some others you see others as
there's level of antimony. I can discriminate. I respect everyone, every living being, because you see everyone is a part of this community. At the same time, I understand people Especially nowadays, even when tobacco becomes especially what I found is like India culture. I don't know why I was baptized, so I'm religious, but I'm not actually Christian. I mean, that's Prabhupada was saying that if you were born in Florida, sometimes we just forget about that. I think that just saying that we're talking about being humble, means I'm humble. I know if there's somebody would do that, it must be like same time with Kirtan.
Information is need instruction.
Information is needed first. Right.
Without information,
Yes, proper.
otherwise, you can have just grow and grow and grow. As a bush, as a tree, then you have a nice garden. So you need information. Information has to be trained. Look at the surroundings. Understand what the surroundings is. For that you can understand yourself. Then you know integrate yourself. When somebody just doesn't listen and insults you, I know, right? I was maybe life is never possible. Life is amazing. So somebody praises you that you know yourself perfectly well, you'll try to become better than the average person. But I guess that's anyway. Amazing job. You direct them to the right you want to stay
Hare Krishna. Somebody turned the volume up. Somebody know how to turn the volume back down again? It went way up. Down. It's got a big echo. Echo, 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 echo. Okay, so what's next is I'm going to look for some volunteers. maybe 2 or 3. If somebody would like, sure, invite them in. Oh, wow.
They went to the other room.
Okay. Okay. I wondered what happened. So I'll pass the microphone as soon as I finish inviting you to volunteer, whatever you'd like to share from your little group's discussion. And I'm particularly interested in the personal application part. So what can I do? Not what can they do to improve, what can I do to improve? But whatever it was that you ended up discussing, because we covered a lot of topics. So anybody would like to share with the others how the discussion in your group went? You're the reporter for your group or something like that.
I can.
Okay.
Being the nearest to you.
Okay, thank you.
And then I'll pass it to whoever wants
As
it.
long as the amplifier doesn't start screaming. Yeah, just come. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I can't really summarize everything that we discussed here.
Yeah, go ahead.
What I understood is what
Okay.
I can say.
Okay.
Is that
Ladies, shh, 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 shh.
this one?
Yes, yeah, I think this is speaker. This one is fine. Still a bit from
Yeah.
Yeah, that is.
I think this
Very nice. Okay, go for it.
Yeah. So what I understood out of our discussion here may differ, but I feel that in order for us to basically grow from where we are to where we go,
Uh-huh.
is we have to be humble.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, for us to be humble, we have to kind of feel that we got to respect everybody around us in a way that we feel that any constructive criticism that might come our way, it is for our improvement.
You got it.
If it's for our improvement, then we will feel that we will not feel ill over others when they give you a feedback.
Good. That's it, huh? That's the summary of your discussion.
We are
Fantastic.
very small compared to the whole universe.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, basically the foundation should be trust and respect, which requires some faith in the Sadhu Sangha, and by association we become humble, and when we humble we can recognize genuine desires of other devotees, and thus I think this respect and trust naturally occur in our hearts. And if there is no respect and trust, it's so hard to accept, any criticism. So it is very important, I think, to practice Krishna Bhakti. So it's basically like Sadhu Sangha. Based on Sadhu Sangha, you have this bhajana kriya when you practice, and because of your practice, you can become actually a devotee by the mercy of other devotees.
Uh-huh.
So, if you don't practice, you're not humble. If you're not humble, you cannot see that in other people and the devotees, and thus you cannot really grow as a community. Anything that's, in some degree, that's something that I experienced here in Rochester. When we don't have the community, but we have nice devotees trying different things, but there is no synergy of us cooperating. And it seems like everything we do is just in vain because, there is no community. And I think we have to focus first on that community, on the trust and respect before we focus on any projects, because those projects are their side effects of love and respect that we have among us. So I don't want to take a lot of time. I can.
You were very active speaking, I could hear from over here.
I can talk about that. Yes.
Ah.
It's a hot potato.
It's the hot
Yes.
potato. That
Yes,
mic-
I get the
hot
speech.
potato.
basically we just spoke of acceptance. You first have to accept what the other person is saying, obviously, right? Or else you can't even be humble or anything. And you have to accept yourself, whether that's good or bad. And you have to admit, what the reality is between you and the other person, or this group and that group. Or else there's not even, you can't even reach that humility. Is that what we covered?
We learned how to accept compliments.
I think that's kind of.
Say it so we can hear it.
Well, we talked about accepting compliments, which.
Don't say no.
Yeah. You have to accept it. You have to be humble, right?
Yeah.
And you also have to be truthful within yourself and with the other person that you're dealing with. You have to be aware of what your actual personalities are.
The protection for pride is the acceptance gets transferred.
Mm-hmm.
You just a transparent medium. Oh, thank you very much. Now I know that you're honoring the person who has trained me or has given me something.
Acknowledgement, right.
So you just
We
transfer
did
it.
that as well.
You accept, and it just goes on to someone above you and that you look up to and have
Mm-hmm.
regard for it.
And I think.
The example would be really helpful for everybody. So Priya told Vidya is a very good singer. So last year she told her, you sang so well, or you've got a beautiful voice. And Vidya said, all glories to my guru who taught me. So she accepted it, but gave it where she got the gift.
So don't let it stick. Don't let it bounce.
Don't let it sit in your head.
Yeah, it doesn't
Make it
stick.
huge.
It doesn't bounce. It's not no. Yes. It's
Thank you, and this is why.
Krishna
And then
is
we
very.
also said that when we say no, that means, she pointed out correctly, that you're actually like denying what that other person said. You're
Yeah.
actually negating what that person is giving you a compliment or whatever they're saying. You're belittling them, so you don't want to do that.
No.
So,
Very good. Very
Because
good.
we were under the notion that when you say no, we are actually being humble, that we are not, but that's not correct.
That's not correct.
That's not correct.
It's a false
Better to
humility.
accept it and say where it is coming from, whether it's the guru, whether it's your parents, whether it's teacher, or where it's the Almighty God.
See, you didn't want to take the hot potato. Now you're all sharing here. Thank you for sharing.
And we want,
You want to add? Go ahead.
yeah, we had different scenarios we wanted to
Take
talk.
the phone. Take the mic.
We wanted to talk different scenarios about the second thing, how to accept feedbacks. If you are in a work or if you are receiving feedbacks from somebody you are not so close with, like you are like a coworker or an outsider, somebody who's not more
backup.
familiar with you,
Yeah.
then you take it in a positive way, like you don't react or anything. But when it comes to family, if your mom gives a feedback or if your spouse gives a feedback, then it's a different reaction at home. So we were trying to figure out how to respond to feedbacks from people who are so close to you, how not to react to them, like when they throw feedbacks at you in a disrespectful way, like your children can throw feedbacks in a so disrespectful way. What do you do?
as a leader of the family.
As a leader of the family, what do you
Yeah.
do?
Yeah.
So that's the leader.
So we didn't know how to.
You didn't know.
How,
No.
no.
Really?
So we didn't know if you have to be really humble when they are being so disrespectful to you, or just react. I don't know.
No, don't react. That's not a solution.
We usually shout in the house.
I think you should ask yourself the question why they are being disrespectful. That's, I think, more important than worrying about what we should do. Ask your kids why. What's the
Feedback
reason?
may be
There has to be some problem, right?
No, but the
And then-
feedback, criticism might be actually a true thing. The child or whoever, your spouse or whoever, your family, your sibling, your whoever, is it's probably giving you a correct feedback, but it's being given in a very, you know,
Harsh.
harsh way, and then how do you handle that, especially if they are close to you? And in a professional setting, it's easy to handle because it's black and white most of the time. Sometimes
that-
gray, but even then you can handle it. But at home, because they're close to you,
It's even more important that you talk to them, take out the time, talk to them, you tell them it hurt you when you said something like that. And if I'm wrong, I'll try to correct myself, but then you correct yourself too. What you are saying, the way you are saying is not right, and I don't like it.
I think we take it for granted, people who are close to in a relationship,
That's
that we
not
don't
acceptable.
recognize. No, I'm not saying generally. We take it for
Yes.
granted that, oh, it's my wife, I can tell her anything. But no, she's a human being, right? And I'm a human too. So you have to respect that boundaries of a human being, even though you have a close relationship because you're bound by a marriage or parents or children, right?
Doesn't matter.
You still have to realize that they're still human beings. They could get hurt if you say things in a different way or they didn't mean it. So you have to think it from their perspective, listen to it on your own, and then react based on that. And sometimes just say sorry. I mean, sometimes it'll be an outburst, right?
Exactly.
But afterwards, you say sorry and move on.
That's very critical.
Explain
I
why you
want,
got
I want to comment, but I don't have, I'd like the microphone.
Okay.
I've got it easy, I'm a sannyasi. But that's probably not a solution for most of the persons in this room. In a close relationship setting, family or close friends, or like he was speaking, community, because that's also intended to be close, like family. Something that I'll give credit to Anutama Prabhu. Some of you may know who he is. He's our communications director. And so there's two things, and then I'll give the microphone back. When giving feedback, his training, and I've heard this like 10 times at least, appreciation, room for improvement, appreciation. So that the message, the room for improvement message, is framed in a way that's respecting the sensibilities and sensitivities and et cetera, of the other person. So it's really expressed in a proper manner with interest in the other's well-being and their room for improvement. Related to that is, separately but connected, is in families, especially the parent, the husband and wife, or the mother and father, set a standard of how to, before their children, how to model giving feedback to your husband or your wife, your spouse, and you establish a culture that's respectful culture. And the more that there's training and education in the manner of a cultured way of doing things, it becomes the culture of the family or the culture of the community, the culture of respect. Now, that's easier said than done, but it's a principle that when there's close relationships, if a cultured person gives feedback, then it's respected because they mean well. And they're consistently meaning well because they abide by that culture. So that's a recommendation. Now, building culture takes time, and it takes character, but it sort of rests on the same thing of chapter 13, Bhagavad Gita, 8 through 10. When there's knowledge of who you are and respecting others for who they are, and there's differences and room for improvement kinds of things, there's a way that there's a culture of how to respect, at the same time offer some lovingly meant room for improvement message. So to do that with your children, you're more likely to get it back from your children if you show that culture than if you don't, or with your spouse, if you do that or if you don't. Then the family atmosphere and the community atmosphere more respectful. Okay, in the back. Someone pass the microphone back.
Okay. I'll start and then the others can comment on it. So we had a pretty involved discussion and where we talked about the both positive and negative feedback in a work setting, family setting, and volunteering in an organization setting. And what we talked was that there are layers and powers above you, and there are like people below you are part of a team who are making it happen. It's not just you. So people above you, they have enabled and empowered you to do things, and then there's a team who's working with you, for you, whichever we want to call it, and they made it happen. So if you receive positive feedback, it's a feedback for everybody. Take it and always encourage and appreciate your team.
Good.
And the flip side is if you get negative feedback, own it yourself. Don't spread that. So we talked about both. And I think one other thing we took away was maybe it's a good idea to never take anything personally or too personally, whether it's positive or negative. On the positive side, don't get too swayed by compliments. On the negative side, don't get beaten up. So that's something that I've been trying to practice somewhat unsuccessfully for a few years. But you can imagine if you were truly able to imbibe the don't take anything personally, it could lead to sort of a happier life in general. But yeah.
I think, Ashish and, they both covered what we discussed, but one more thing that I feel, the feedback or compliment is a compliment, don't get associated with it, even if it's a good or bad. Right? In today's community, people will give you feedback for all different reasons. So if you like it, you take it. Otherwise, just say, in professional settings, yes, definitely we always say it's a teamwork. But in personal settings, you just have to be careful. Like we were talking, if it's a constructive feedback, then take it. But you don't know. If you like a feedback, then only you think it's a constructive. If you don't like it, then you're even not gonna think it's a constructive or destructive. Rest it depends, how it's being given.
A couple things also came out. Sometimes we don't know what is going on in the other person's mind. And if we are more aware of ourselves, we can probe that question, find out the real truth. It could be, my own personal example was at work here, there was a lady, and she was a very good, nice lady, helped everybody out. But one day she flipped. And what happened, turned out she's diabetic. It was the sugar level. In the morning she would have a Coke or something. At that point she didn't have it. And that had a big impact on her. So if we can be more aware of our own selves and try to understand from different perspective, it makes really start to grow too. The other thing is that sometimes there's more than one truth. We may be thinking from this angle, and as Vidya said, her son may come and tell, hey, this is the way, and he may be right, which we did not see that angle. So if we accept that, and if we are more aware of ourselves, we can look at the whole thing holistic as to how things go.
We have some learned people here.
वैष्णव जन तो तेने रे कहिए जे पीड़ पराई जाने रे. One who is Vaishnav, devotee of Krishna, knows the pain of others, does good to others, without letting pride enter his mind. So this bhajan for me translate being humble and acceptance of our surroundings and on oneself. Thank you.
I think it's time to end. You're a fantastic audience and very participatory. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I need her contact information before I disappear. make sure I get your contact information so I can send you.
I don't, Divya Leela has one.
Divya Leela has it. Magic lady, okay.
She is the magic lady.
Okay. So thank you all for participating. And somewhere there's Mahaprasada.
Yes.
Thank you for coming and enlightening us all. We are
Well, just gives a good excuse for everybody to come together and hear about Krishna.
truly blessed.
I'm a catalyst just so you can come together and hear about
I heard
Krishna.
you couple of times, but this is really blessed.
Okay. What's up?
Mataji has a Bhagavatam set and someone is going to receive also. Yeah, the host is going to receive, so on your hands. You want to
Okay.
receive it.
I'm supposed to hand you a Bhagavad Gita set. Just one book,
Srimad
please.
Bhagavatam.
Not the whole set.
Srimad Bhagavatam.
You.
So now just our microphone doesn't turn off. So
I have one question for you.
You have a question. Yay.
My son started reading Gita and he asked one question to me and I was not able to answer.
Really?
Yes. So he said, in Gita, why is so much pride in God? Why is so much I? Why, Krishna is all talking about himself.
And you didn't know how to answer that?
I didn't have a good answer for that.
you
Well, it's a little bit like what this gentleman said in the back. They're different. There are different ways of looking at the same thing. This was your statement. Different ways of looking at the same thing. That was your statement, right?
From your group. Yeah.
So he's speaking about himself because he's the source of everything. Aham sarvasya prabhavo aham matak sarvam pravartate iti matva. One who knows this, bhajante mam, engages in my devotional service. Buddha bhava samandita, and they get intelligence and their life becomes perfect. So why is he speaking about himself? Because he wants people to be happy. And the problem is people are not happy because they're in La La Land. They're thinking something else is at the center. So he's speaking out of compassion. Who was the one asking that question? He's compassionate. He's not self-centered. He wants to give reality instead of illusion, because reality is happiness and illusion is the opposite. It is reality. Why is this light fixture giving so much light anyways? Because there's darkness. The light fixture is here because there's darkness. He's speaking about himself because there's darkness of illusion. In material existence, he's bringing light so people can be happy. That's what he wants. He wants people to be happy. Okay, so Bhagavatam said?